So is it fair to say that of these 2,400 some odd, none of those complaints represent actions or experiences that are life-threatening? Life-threatening?
I cannot say that with 100% assurance. That's how we approach things, and how we interpret it and how the family may interpret it. Maybe, they may take it as, it is a very high, for cold food is very important. My mother can't eat if her food isn't cold. So, in our sense, I feel that we've done, to the best of my knowledge, all of the priority 1 complaints have been taken care of.
Okay. Okay. Senator Monty. My next questions, I think, really deal with the frequency chart on page 13, so I think I'll wait until we actually hear that proposal. Any comments on her overview from LAO or Finance? Okay, great. Let's move on to item 2, which is the budget change proposal number 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pat Leary, Chief Deputy Director. I want to begin by actually tagging on to something else that we did implement last year but wasn't a part of the budget proposal last year, and that was what we call our transparency site. One of the things that we had been correctly criticized for many years was the difficulty that the public had in getting information about facilities. We had not entered the 20th century, let alone the 21st century, in terms of making that information available to the public. And so we made a concerted effort to create a site, a website that people could go online and check and see what the history of a facility was. Had they had inspections? Did they have violations? What was the regional office that covered it? And so we created this site. It went live last spring. It has very basic information, but a lot of good information and directions as to how to get more information. So, for example, the citations that a facility might have, you might look up, Happy Home Daycare, and it might have, or, Happy Home Retirement Community, and it might have 4 citations. Originally, they would just be listed in sort of a bucket of citations that there were, of the 4, 1 was a type A and 3 were type Bs, and there were descriptions of what that meant. But to the public, it still wasn't really helpful. So we've been trying to improve it as we go. We didn't want to wait until it was perfect to make it be available. So we've been making continuous changes all the way along. So now when you look, you can see if within the last 5 years there were 4 citations, you can see when those citations were issued. Because it's a lot more important if you're a parent looking for a daycare or you're a child looking for a place for your parent to know, what's the recent history? Is this something that happened a long time ago, or is this something that's pretty recent I need to pay attention to? The other thing, and this has been the more difficult, which is why it's still not up, but we are planning to have it available later this year, is the actual inspection reports. So that you'd be able to see and read what the licensed program analyst saw when they went out to the facility, and having that available. Because that's all in narrative, it's taking us a little bit longer, but those licensing reports should be available online later this year. The next phase after that will actually be to add the complaint visits as well. So one step at a time, we're really trying to make this be a helpful tool to families so that they can really get an idea of how things are working. We've had over on the facility site search page over 500,000 hits so far of people looking at different facilities. So obviously, there's been pent-up demand.
Yes.
We knew that. That's why we wanted to implement that. So I just wanted to mention that was something else that we did last year.
Thank you for that.
In terms of the new proposal, and that's included in the budget this year, I'm going to talk a little bit about the inspection frequency and how we came up with it. We recognized, even during last year's budget discussions and conversations with the legislature, that we needed to increase inspection frequency. But we thought it was critically important that before we added a lot more staff and sent a lot more people out into the field, we really did need to correct those foundational issues that Ms. Dickfoss talked about. We needed to have quality assurance. We needed to improve our training. We couldn't we couldn't in good conscience bring in a lot more people into a system where we didn't really have a good concept that there was consistency and quality going on throughout the state. Now that those have been implemented, and they're still baby steps because we're just talking a few weeks ago that some of them were actually completed, we wanted to get a little bit of time for them to really fully take root, let our quality assurance unit in particular, and then immediately after that begin to increase the frequency of inspections. And as we looked at how we could best develop that and how we could come up with a basis on which we could increase that frequency and still do it within the economic realities that we're living in, we recognized we needed to ramp it in because, again, taking in a whole lot of people all at once is just a recipe for inconsistency and issues. So that's why it's a 3-year phased-in approach, so that we take it in sort of a year at a time, we absorb it, we move on, we get better each year. We differentiated between the types of facilities, between child care, between children's residential, and between adult and senior care. On the basis of, again, we still are living within the economic realities that we are. And given that we wanted to improve them, but we want to improve this frequency as much as we possibly could, we tried to look at a rational basis of, is there a reason we could do these differently? And at the end of the day, childcare has the least amount of hours in care. It's not residential in that people are going home, children go home every night from childcare, and there's a parent or guardian who's dropping off and picking up each day. So there are a lot of extra eyes on these facilities, looking around, are things going well, interacting with their children, how's it going, are you happy, do you have friends? And they're getting a lot of feedback. As you move into the children's residential world, now you've moved into a residential setting, so 24/7 operations, obviously more complex. The children who are in those facilities have more complex needs and issues. And although we do have required visits by county social workers, on a monthly basis, there is not a lot of interaction of other people going in and out of that facility. Similarly, with adult and senior care, in those cases, you may be talking, again, residential facilities, but now you're talking about people with pretty sometimes complex medical needs and changing medical needs and disability needs and access. And regrettably, frequently, not a lot of people coming in and out to visit those individuals. And so the basis on which we made the recommendation to go to once every 3 years for childcare, once every 2 years for children's residential, and once every 1 year for adult and senior care was on that basis of just the complexity of the care that's involved and the number of interactions for possibilities of people seeing that something is going awry and alerting us to that, calling that complaint hotline that Ms. Dickbost mentioned earlier, which is 1-844 let us know, by the way. They can alert us, and then we can go in and investigate. And we think that that makes the most sense in an era of still limited resources to make the best and most effective use of the dollars in which we have. And that was the sort of the basis that we came up with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is very helpful, and applaud the work that you're doing to work towards these goals. Just so I'm clear, these inspection targets, currently once every 5 years and then moving across the grid based on the type of facility, those would be regular inspections, but just so I'm clear, if there's a complaint about something at a facility, that would trigger an independent inspection based on that complaint.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So again, these are just routine, presumably comprehensive kind of inspection of the facility and
Right,
with a
not based on a
checklist.
complaint, exactly.
Great, thank you.
And Senator Moaning, if I could add, the division would also continue the random 30% inspections so that no one knows for sure.
Right, and that part of the scheme then any facility operator could have, is it a knock at the door? Do they get some minimal notice of the inspectors coming in? How does that work?
All of the inspections are unannounced inspections except in foster homes, where it's a family. In those, they're announced, but all the other inspections are unannounced inspections, including complaint visits.
Right, so that presumably has operators of facilities, you've got to be up to speed every day of the week, because that inspector could be knocking at your door tomorrow. Yeah, thank you.
On the timeline, first of all, I'd have to say that I am clear. I think the cuts community care licensing has taken over the past decade were probably some of the more irresponsible actions the legislature took, as well as the previous administration. Because like I said, given the nature of the work you do in terms of really public safety, it's public safety, and the nature of the populations that are in these facilities. And so I've always been, a supporter of not less, but more funding for CCL and more training from the public safety perspective. I have to say, in my previous life, in the early care and education world, when we would go to national conferences on child care quality, you would almost want to put blackout California because people would really look at your name badge and then go, oh, you're from California, where they do inspections, every 5 years, never, whatever. And, this whole notion, as advocates, we would talk about that, your child, you could enroll your child in a child care facility as an infant, and the child will age out and be in kindergarten before that facility was inspected, just to help people understand the vision, what 5 years means in the life of a child. And so, I have to say that all of the nationally recognized authorities say for child care facilities, it's annual. I appreciate your point about, of the facilities, it is the one kind of operation where there's day-to-day contact. But, kids 0 to 3, 0 to 4 may tell you that, Senator Stone bit me today. But, and, biting is an issue in child care facilities. But, there are other really critical issues that, infants and toddlers aren't able to communicate. And if you go into the front room and you're signing in, signing out, you may not be in the kitchen. You don't know the quality or the amount of the food. My 14-year-old would tell me, I didn't get enough at snack. But, that was, again, when he was older. And so, even with your staging process, which I support, because you've got to be able to ramp up to do it well and consistent, I'm still concerned that we're still only looking at every 3 years for child care facilities. It's below the nationally recognized model. When we, as policymakers, we always want to know about national rankings and where our programs fall in national rankings, and we still present woefully low in terms of the quality of our child care provision in the state of California, and this is one of the key indicators. And so what can we do to change that 3-year expectation?
Well, one of the things that I think it was mentioned as a question in the agenda was, what about CCDBG, the Child Care and Development Block Grant, and the new requirements that the federal government is instituting?
And in effect, will be out of compliance.
And we are currently working with the Department of Education to try and coordinate our response in a state plan that will go back and be submitted to the federal government as to how we're going to comply. One of the elements of that block grant, it's not a new block grant, but they're new requirements, is annual inspections of health, safety, and fire. It also requires that completely new requirement that there be annual inspections of licensed exempt providers, which have never previously been required to meet. Concept of license exempt is there's licensed exempt. And so there is going to be a requirement that they have annual inspections, as well as the development in 10 different areas of health and safety requirements that they will have to meet. So we're having weekly meetings with the Department of Education to try and come up with the response to that plan. There are a number of other things in the plan as well that are different that require California to really look at how and who should best respond to this. Is it the Department of Social Services? Is it someone else? What should that look like, and how should we comply? There are provisions for waivers from the requirements. They're not as broad as some federal grant waivers that might be allowed. They have a number of things like your legislature doesn't meet frequently enough to enact the statutory changes that you need, fiscal issues, disaster issues. Something would be redundant. For example, one of the requirements is that we add an additional database to our criminal background check process, and California actually has probably the most robust criminal background check in the nation. And this other database that the federal government would like us to add is name-based, which means all the John Smiths all come up at the same time. So it's really labor-intensive, and it doesn't. From our perspective, it doesn't really add any value. We're not catching anybody else on that database that we're not catching in all the other databases we're checking. So there is a provision in the waiver requirements that allows you to say this is redundant or it doesn't really add any value. So those are all the issues that we're going to have to be discussed. I mean, those and others are the issues that we're going to continue to discuss and develop along with the Department of Education to put in the state plan, which is due back to the feds next March.
Okay. Anything else? LAO.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Senators. Lourdes Morales with the Legislative Analyst Office. Overall, we find that the governor's proposed multi-year plan is responsive to legislative interest to increase inspection frequency. However, we do believe that it's premature to approve the multi-year plan in totality. We understand that there is concern that the current 5-year inspection frequency is too lengthy and can place vulnerable clients at risk. And we understand that increasing inspection frequency could allow the CCL division to identify potential threats before they actually harm the clients. We therefore do recommend approval of the first stage of the multi-year plan, that is to increase inspection frequency to 3 years for all facility types. However, we recommend that future year changes to further increase inspection frequency be based on data-driven analysis that targets these inspections to facilities with the most likely to be challenged. Now, by this, we don't mean that we necessarily need a complex algorithm to assess precisely which facilities might have issues, but rather think a little more specifically and at a more granular level about the facilities that may be targeted. As was described, the facilities currently are based on broad facility type, and so there might be an opportunity to look more specifically at how we target our resources. And again, this is an intent to inform our limited resource more cost effectively. In addition, using a data-driven model may allow and create more flexibility and capacity to inspect facilities that have a history of challenges or may develop a history of challenges more frequently than is proposed by the administration. That is to say that some facilities may need more than an annual inspection. We therefore recommend that the legislature reject the out-year components of the proposal and direct the department to develop some sort of data-driven model. As for the other components of the proposal, that is the complaint backlog positions and those other components, we think that they are reasonable next steps that build on the reforms that were approved by the legislature last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finance? Before I open up to public comment, I want to raise a couple of issues that have come to my attention with regard to the soon-to-end TARP contract, TARP being Trust Line Automated Registration Process. In LA County, my county, along with 20-some-odd others, are using TARP. So the problem is, or the question is, it's scheduled to end, the current contract. We want to know what options are available to Department of Social Services to either extend the current LifeScan vendor contract, which will really allow those who use it, AP agencies, research and referral agencies, county welfare departments, the additional time they need to really prepare meaningfully for a transition, given the number of people who are live scanned in all these various programs. What's what are the options available to you, and then support them.
Right. Thank you, Senator. We are passing out a one-pager right now to discuss sort of what the status of the TARP versus TWA. And both of those acronyms stand for a trust line automated process versus a trust line web-based application. And under the current, the way that the process has worked since 1998, when the contract was first issued. We had counties who were using what's known as TARP, where we had a contractor on board who would not only, once they had the fingerprints, they would also enter the key data and information, and then that was automatically sent to us at the department for processing and putting into the background check process. In addition, the fingerprint rolling fees were included in the price of that contract. Unfortunately, that contract had been in place since 1998 and had never gone out to bid in competitive bidding. And we had to put that out for competitive bid. That went out in 2013, and regrettably, there were no successful bidders, and the current contractor did not participate, did not submit a bid.
Why do you think that is?
I do not know. I couldn't speculate as to why they didn't, but they did not submit a bid. And so as a result, we didn't have a successful bid.
Were the deliverables included in your request for proposals for the bid drastically different from 98? I'm just trying to figure out from a business perspective why they wouldn't bid again. Curious. Okay.
No, I honestly don't know. So given that we weren't successful at that and we knew how critical this process was, we needed to come up with an alternative. And so half of what they did was not doing the actual automated data entry themselves at the one site, but also they had a web-based system where it was a two-step process. And so 22 counties used the automated process, 18 of those entirely, and 4 of them sort of did a little bit of both. Almost all of the large counties, in fact, virtually all of the large counties used exclusively the TARP process, and a couple of them, Riverside, I think, and San Bernardino used both processes. Most of the other counties used what we call the TWA application, and one county didn't use either one. So we decided that what we could do was to duplicate what had been the web-based application and make that available statewide. We didn't have a contractor on the other side, so we needed to do it internally, which is what we have done. There are still 2 outstanding issues, at least 2 outstanding issues that we want to work with the stakeholders, with the R&R networks and with CWDA to try and solve both of those, hopefully before the end of the next month. Well, 2 months, it's not quite May yet. By the end of June, prior to the expiration of the thing, the web-based program that we developed is going to be available and ready to go. But it creates a couple of hurdles. It does make individual providers, and we're talking about approximately 7,000 individuals who've gone through this process. It does make them go to more than one site, and it makes it more difficult because it's a potential hurdle. And so we want to try and see if there might be another way to use that third parties could develop a web-based application that they could then submit to the state, that could be done at the same locations or at the same time as the applications were created in the first place. So it would look very similar to the TARP program, except that we wouldn't have one contractor at the other end. What we would do would be to create a portal that other contractors, they're not contractors, they might contract with the county or the R&R network, but they could plug in to that web service. I believe it's called a web service call. I'm not technologically literate, but I believe that's what it's called, so that they could do that. And the hope there would be it would look about the same as the existing process looked. Now, the one issue with that is we still have the issue of the fingerprint rolling fees and how to reimburse the provider for the money that they would have to be putting up front. Right. In the TARP counties, because the contract itself contained the reimbursement for that, the provider never saw it. All they
Right.
had to pay were the DOJ fees.
Right.
And not these, and it's about $25,
Right.
more or less.
Right.
Which is a lot of money to
It is.
these individuals. And on the TWA counties and that we're doing it, the other 35 counties, there's a great variation in terms of reimbursement and how people got reimbursed.
And so when I'm looking at this paragraph here, I'm struck by the variation, but that there also is an option or a situation where no reimbursement to the provider is made, where the county is being reimbursed from the state.
No, it's not that they only got funds if they were requesting funds. They weren't getting funds and then not passing it on to the provider.
Okay.
It was just their choice not to ask for the funds, to reimburse those providers. And so we are looking at some potential options for creating the funding is already there. I mean, we already have existing funding that would cover this. We're looking for the appropriate mechanism to get it to the counties to try and make it as seamless as possible. We're still looking at trying to figure out what the best answer to that is, but we're hoping over the next couple of weeks that we can actually come up with an alternative that will work statewide that everyone can take advantage of, all the counties could take advantage of.
So I'm concerned for a variety of reasons. Having run an agency where we had live scan on site, and so the notion of now having to go to more than one place, live scan, fingerprint rolling someplace else, the cost. The barriers, in previous hearings, we've talked about the stage 1 child care uptake, which is really low, which continues to give me nightmares. While we're looking at, as we looked at in our joint hearing with Sub-2, the loss of licensed child care stock, if you will, my concern is that this would be another potential barrier to a stage 1 mom who's got a very limited amount of time to get her child care situation straight before her aid runs out. Do you think that this vendor transition and these processes that we're still trying to figure out to put in place before a contract ends in 10 minutes, June 30, 2015, I'm concerned about delays potential licensees would experience with this operational transition.
Right. Well, for those counties that have live scan in the county, county staff can do the inputting of the forms. That's what the TWA process allows them to do. For R&Rs who have live scan in their offices, they can do the entering of that information. So there wouldn't be a requirement to go to 2 different places. It's only going to be in those places where individuals used to maybe come to the CCL offices, our community care licensing offices, and then use the TARP process. But there are other vendors that they could go to and then go to if the county welfare department isn't available or isn't located in a, easily accessible area.
Or accessible hours.
Yeah, or accessible hours. Or the R&R doesn't have that, same challenges as well. But the creation of the website application was unfortunately the only alternative that we had in terms of figuring out that we could get them there. Meaning that the contract couldn't be extended. We had extended it, sort of too many times.
Right.
And
As a sole
that
source
wasn't an
vendor, I get
available
that.
option.
I get
right.
that.
So these last options are about how can we now take what worked in the smaller counties, just in terms of that application process, and was working well in those places, and make sure that it can also work well in the larger counties.
This is an issue I would appreciate if you keep committee staff
Absolutely.
apprised, since it's going to happen in very short order. That would be very helpful to me. Any other questions from committee members? At this point, we will open it up for public comment on BCP number 3, and ask that you keep your comments within a 2-minute limit.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Heather Harrison with the California Assisted Living Association. We represent licensed residential care facilities for the elderly throughout the state. We are in strong support of return to annual inspections. The legislature and the department has made tremendous progress last year to really restore community care licensing. One big gap was the inspection frequency. We're very pleased to see it being addressed this year and urge your support.
Thank you. Next witness, please. 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Senators. My name is Maisha Cole, and I'm from the California Child Care Resource and Referral Network, and we support the additional resources proposed in the CCLD recommendations, but we want to ensure that all licensed child care facilities are included, including child care facilities. Our children's health and safety cannot be jeopardized, and we just think it's really important for all facilities to be inspected yearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. My name is Mark Victoria. I'm with ASME Local 2620, representing the LPAs that are out in the community doing the inspections. We stand in strong support, echoing, the previous commenters here. We stand in strong support and stand strong support with yourself, asking to get to annual inspections in childcare as well. And just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Linda Sato with the Child Care Resource and Referral Network, and also want to echo what everybody's saying about the importance of annual inspections, particularly for child care facilities, that the health and safety is the basic of quality, and that we really, I thought was very important that she also wrote here is that over-reliance on complaints as a primary means to monitor facilities shouldn't be the case. It should be monitored annually. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was the NACRA conferences where we would walk around and cover California on our name badges so we wouldn't get booed and hissed out of the whole national conference.
Absolutely.
So,
And I also want to thank you for the discussion also on the talk process as well.
thank you very much. One quick, I was reminded, you talked about the license exempt population being included in, and so I'm assuming it will be a different set of criteria than a licensed facility or even a family daycare home.
The block grant sets up 10 areas of health and safety that the license exempt providers will have to meet. And so that's part of the discussion about how, is it a mirror image? Is it the same? Is it, do you have different standards for health and safety? How does that work? These are the issues that we're having to work through.
Just because, those could be the kinds of requirements that will drive license exempt out and either increase the license number or reduce options for parents if, grandma can't, I don't know, not build a ramp, that would be a facility, but do some of the physical plant changes that would require perhaps investment. So that would be my concern, that we don't create a process that excessively negatively impacts the exempt world.
Capacity is a big concern.
It is a
for the department
huge
as well.
concern, no matter what we, talk in this context about license exempt. We don't have enough, capacity doesn't meet demand. Supply does not meet demand in early care and education. So there has to be a place for exempt because they save us, quite frankly. All right, thank you. We're going to leave that item open. Let's move on to item number 3. Colleagues, we are, it is staff's recommendation that we take action on items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, just so you're aware. And again, we'll take public comment at the end of item 7. So Trailer Bill 600, continued suspension of fingerprint licensing fee exemption.
So this exemption has been in place since 2003 and 2004. We're just asking to continue to charge fees to those care providers in group homes that have children less than 6 or small family child care homes.
Questions?
I'm ready to,
Any comment from LAO or finance?
I'm prepared to move that.
Since we're not taking public comment to 7.
Oh, should we wait?
Let's wait
Let's
and do
wait.
them all after we hear public
Good
comment.
point.
Is that
makes
okay with you?
sense.
Yeah, seems to me.
We should hear
kinda
from the
in
public
moment.
before we vote.
That's,
That makes sense.
seems reasonable to me, but it's
Let's do
Thursday
that.
afternoon. Okay. Are you okay with that, Senator Stone? We'll take action, okay? And if we need to break them up, we'll be happy to do that. We're going to break them up, that's fine. Let's move on to item number 4, BCP number 7, AB 1217, Home Care Services Consumer Protection Act, Phase 2.